What makes the World Cup so unique, not just for the sports world, not just for the soccer world, but the entire planet?
Well, it's funny when you think about it because it's a tournament that's only played every 4 years. There's only 32 teams involved. It used to be 23 players per team. Today, it's going to be, in today's climate, 26 with everything we've gone through in the pandemic. So think about this. In a country of 340 million, you're one of 26 players. Your team, those 26 players, in that fourth year get to represent your country in a tournament that's gone on since the 30s that only 8 countries have ever won. It really is this prestigious celebration, if you will. And I was fortunate enough to experience it as a player, 2010. And as a player, you get to see what your hotel's like, the hotel to the bus to the stadium, and then back. That's what you get to experience. Game day, sure, it's fine, it's exciting, it's something else. But this is my second World Cup now as a pundit working for ESPN. And we're going for Football Americas down there. And the first time we went in Russia, a country that was maybe ill-equipped to host a World Cup, it was the biggest party, the biggest celebration, the biggest collection of people for their sport or for any sport that I've ever seen in my life. You really get a sense of just how special it is.
Tell me what you think about playing in November, the World Cup in November in Qatar.
You know, it's funny because normally it's in the summer, and you know what the summer entails, especially in a country like Qatar. If you're anywhere around that region in the Middle East, and I've been to that region, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, for the Club World Cup 10 years ago. And I was there in the winter, and I could tell you it was like high 90s, dry, not suitable for daytime play. This is the reason they're going to have it in the winter. Because if not in the summer, you're going to be in the 130s. People will be boiling, baking under the sun. They have 7 or 8 stadiums. I think 7 of the 8 stadiums have AC. The one that doesn't have AC has natural air flowing through. So it is cooled, but you have to have this in the winter. If you're going to host it in a country like Qatar, it has to be the wintertime, because in the summertime, and I'm a Vegas kid. I grew up in Las Vegas. I know what desert summers are like. They're unbearable at times, so there's no way it would have been done or would have been able to be done in Qatar during the summer.
Herculez, recently former President Sepp Blatter came out and said it was a mistake to award Qatar with the World Cup because of various reasons, controversies. What are your thoughts on that?
Where was this, I don't know, 8 years ago when you named it? Where was this when you gave it to Qatar? Where was this outspokenness from your part when you were still the FIFA president? It's almost like Captain Obvious. Of course it was a mistake. Of course there were a million errors that led to Qatar, some of those corruption errors, having this World Cup, investigations and whatnot, and under his presidency. So this is really difficult to hear now when he's not part of it, where he's been under investigation, instead of back then when you could have done something about it. So here we are, and I'm coming off the 2018 Russia World Cup, when I just told you it was a country that was probably ill-suited to host an event of that magnitude. Now to a place that has 2.9 million inhabitants and is going to see 1.5 million tourists in a matter of a month. So we're all bracing ourselves for what we will see. So far, everything has been up to snuff of what we have seen. But it's just too little too late right now, especially from somebody like Joseph Blatter.
It's been 8 years since we've seen the United States in the World Cup. How important is it for them to have a good showing? And in your opinion, what would be a good showing for them?
Well, it's important for them to have a good showing because this is the first time in a long time that the U.S. has been back to the World Cup, and we're talking about 8 years. The U.S. men's national team had, since 2002, every single year was a year of growth. Every single national team experience was something you could bank on, of them moving into the right direction. And they don't make it out of CONCACAF to represent, the Confederation in the World Cup. It was a huge blow. It set back U.S. soccer, I would say, decades as far as a generation that was lost, the inspiration that was lost. I was inspired by the 1994 and 2002 World Cup. Matt Turner, the #1 goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team, talked about the 2010 World Cup and the Landon Donovan Algeria goal, how that inspired him to be a professional footballer. How many kids lost out on not getting to see Christian Pulisic in his first World Cup in 2018? So it's important to have a good showing. What would be, I guess, considered success for this group, for this very young group, who in World Cup qualifying, out of all the teams that had qualified, at 32 teams, were the youngest national team to participate or that will participate in the World Cup with 24 years of age and 2 months, it's to get out of the group. A very, I would say, difficult group? Yes. Accessible? Absolutely. You have an English squad that hasn't, as much talent as they have had, they've not won in the last 6 games. I've only scored in 2 of those games. You have a Welsh team that has a few very talented players but are a little long in the tooth. And their best showing in recent history was probably the Euros in 2016. So there are moments where you say this is an accessible group. There are a few X factors like Iran, who's a very good team, who's facing their own geopolitical battles right now at the moment. You don't know what to expect out of them. But this is a group where if the U.S. get out, you're like, okay, they got out. But I think that's probably what they're banking on, is to get out of this group. They're banking on 2026, where the majority of these players will be in their mid-20s.
Who, particularly in the U.S. Team, has to perform well in order for them to get to the knockout stage?
Well, you have to bank on your playmakers. You have to bank on your poster boys, if you will, those big players. And I'm talking about Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic was one of the leading goal scorers in the World Cup cycle in 2018 as a teenager. One of the most important players that the U.S. men's national team has produced in quite some time. A player that's been doubted time and time again at a club level with different coaches, whether it was Frank Lampard at Chelsea, Thomas Tuchel at Chelsea, or now Graham Potter, his current coach at Chelsea, and every time has responded with great moments. He has that ability in him where he could be that playmaker for the U.S. men's national team. Another X factor would be Giovanni Reyna, whose mother played for the U.S. women's national team. His father played for the U.S. men's national team, is actually U.S. soccer royalty, if you will, probably the player with the highest ceiling. Those 2 players have to be the players to take this team to the next level. If there is anything special that the U.S. men's national team does this World Cup, it's going to be on the back of those 2 players. It really hinges on that talent level, because for as young as this team is, this is still, on paper, the most talented U.S. men's national team in history. But you have to put it together in this tournament. That's where the names are made. That's where the Landon Donovans were made. That's where the Clint Dempseys were made. This is where Christian Pulisic and Giovanni Reyna will be made, if they are made.
Who are the favorites, in your opinion, in this year's tournament?
You know, Europe has taken the last 7, I believe, of the World Cups. If I'm thinking correctly, I think Brazil was the last South American team. So I'm going back to the well with Brazil because of how strong this team is with Neymar. How every single line, the goalkeeping line, the defensive line, the midfield line, the forward line has talent everywhere because of what they did in World Cup qualifying, because of how good their record is with Chicha, their head coach. Because right now, for my money, Neymar is the best player in the world. And then you have their arch rivals, their nemesis, Argentina, who host Lionel Messi, or have Lionel Messi, who is probably the best player of our generation and one of the best players in the history of the game. Those are my 2 favorites. I will take Brazil right now because I think they are a better team. But Lionel Messi in his last World Cup, because he said this will certainly be his last World Cup, that last go-around, that last dance, if you will, it's tough not to bet on a team like that that's so good defensively and that kind of plays for him. But those are my 2 favorites. I think they rip it away from Europe this go-around.
Who are the dark horses in the tournament?
I'm going to give you one very, I would say, 2 very obvious dark horses are a Portugal team. Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the best players of his generation, with a very good Portuguese generation behind him, a team that kind of caters to his style, and he's still a very important goal scorer, can become the first player to score in 5 different World Cups. That's a very important feat. I think they have the ability to be that dark horse, but it wouldn't really surprise anybody because of the talent in that generation. And then Denmark. Denmark is a team you should watch out for. A very fun team, a team that could be dangerous, a team that's already smacked teams like France in the UEFA Nations League tournament and smacked them handedly. That could be a team. And then for those of you who are familiar with CONCACAF, watch out for Canada. John Herdman's group, they play a very pragmatic style. A lot of local-based players in Major League Soccer, some Canadian players that play in the Canadian Soccer League, also European players. But they've got a good group, a good cohesive unit, and a few very important playmakers, the biggest being Alphonso Davies, a left back for Bayern Munich, who will most likely play in the attacking line for John Herdman in that club, with a forward like Jonathan David, who scores in bunches, Kyle Larin, who's so dangerous, Stakio, who's of Portuguese descent, who plays for Porto, who can man that midfield, if you will. They're a team that I think is going to make waves in a very difficult group. They've got Belgium, very talented, Croatia, who in World Cup 2018 in Russia were finalists against France. Both teams a little long in the tooth, but very, very talented. I think they can surprise in that group, and I think they're going to make some names or some waves.
And last thing, I just wanted to ask you, you have a brother named Ulysses. You are Hercules. What's up with the Greek god
That's
names?
Right. Listen, the 80s were a crazy time here in California. My brother actually ended up being an athlete as well. He's in law enforcement now, was a fighter at the UFC. He's a mixed MMA athlete, so this runs in our blood. My dad just liked the Greek names. I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's a crazy little thing.
Have a great World Cup, and we'll be listening to you. We'll be watching on ESPN+.
Appreciate it. Don't miss Football Americas. We'll be on every single day for you guys. Thank you.